A real estate investor, buy and hold, flipping, wholesaling, development, mobile homes, creative finance expert. Thank you so much for coming today. We're very honored to have you. So I guess, again, 45 minutes is going to go by really fast, so we'll just dive right in. What is one lesson that you wish you had learned sooner that would have made a big impact in your life and your business?
Well, first off, Mike, thanks for having me. And if I wish I would have learned things sooner, and that's half the hack, right? The quicker you can learn a lesson, the quicker you can avoid the headache of having to learn the lesson. I would say this, that the deals you do are directly related to your skill set. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm gonna wait to do XYZ because I don't have money today, or I don't have whatever. That's like saying, you know, let's just say, then you're a handyman, you're like, and this isn't pointing to you, but like saying, hey, I know how to do XYZ, but I don't know how to repair fences. Well, you know what? I'm gonna, instead of repairing this fence, I'm gonna go learn how to put pools in until I can learn how to do fences. I hear that all the time. People are like, oh, well, until I can get some money in the bank, I'm not gonna do rentals, right? It's this whole, let me go around it. But the deals you do are directly related to your skill set. If your objection is, I don't have capital, well, overcome that part. Not go do a different skills, a different strategy in real estate. So I wish I started, keeping property sooner, and so much of it was mentally because I didn't have access to the long-term capital to do so.
That's good. That's good. And so you talk a lot, and this kind of goes into that. You talk a lot about your mentors. You want to tell us a little bit about some of the mentors you've had, and maybe some things you learned from them?
Yeah, I've learned from a lot of people over the years. So I've been doing this just about 10 years. I speak a lot about my 5 top mentors, that they're respectfully gray-haired guys, meaning they've been in this for a long time. Most of them have been investing since 1965 or the 70s. One of them is no longer with us. And those are the people who not only have I learned a lot from them in the sense of like how to do certain types of creative deals, or understanding certain things, so the technical, but so much of my investing philosophy came from them, which has really helped because they've been, having been doing this for almost the last 10 years, I have not been through a down market, right? So I feel like my skills are half-baked, right? They haven't been challenged by a really negative market. And so a big part to that has been, I've really clung to them, especially since 2020, as the market's been, here, there, and everything. And so, but I talk about them very openly. It's Jack Miller, he's no longer with us. Leon Johnson, he's out of Hattiesburg. Peter Fortunato, he's my main mentor out of Tampa. John Schaub's he's out of Clearwater, Florida. And then David Tilney is the other one. He's out of Colorado Springs in Florida. So these are all, most of you probably haven't heard of any of them. Most of them don't have social media channels. They're not, YouTube gurus or anything like that. They've just been in the game for a very long time, and they are who shaped me.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when we were talking yesterday, and you were talking about some of those folks that, you don't realize this isn't new, right? The idea of creative finance and all this stuff isn't something new that popped up the last 10 years. These guys have been doing it for, how long? Like
decades, 50 plus years, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been around for quite a while. And you talked about how those guys kind of helped form your real estate philosophy. Talk to us a little bit about, what is that?
Yeah, so I often wear this shirt, or a version of this shirt, which says, how you do real estate matters. It's that concept of how you approach it. It's your worldview. And so every single one of you have a philosophy or worldview around your real estate investing, either goals, your strategies, whatever, your portfolio, and that comes from things like your mindset around it, your how you go about doing real estate, everything from the technical side, how you raise money, how you find deals, how you structure deals, how you exit deals, all of those things, to also the philosophical side, which is like your core values and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good. Any like tangible, tactical examples of like what that looks like in practice for you versus somebody who may have a different set of values?
It shows up in a lot of ways. So let me give you an example. So I like to read books, hence why we have a whole bunch on the table over here. I came in with a whole bag of them, but I read a book, I think it was in 2019 or 2020, and it was called Extreme Trust by Don Peppers. And the book was about business and customer service. And they gave the example of like, basically, you can no longer just do what you say you're going to do. You have to go further than that, and you have to do what's in their best interest. And he gives the example of his free 7-day trial. And he says, so many businesses now bank on you forgetting that free 7-day trial exists, because what do they want? They want the charge to get your card to get charged and for you to become a client. Like, that's this idea. Well, they say, hey, if you want to operate in extreme trust, then you should send them an email and say, hey, your free trial is coming up to end. If you want to cancel, click here, or otherwise we'd be happy to continue having you as a client, type of thing, right? That's operating in their best interest. And it came down to the idea of your best client shouldn't be an uninformed client. So when I read that, I literally put the book down and I said, what about the sellers I'm buying from? Go and direct the seller. I don't want the sellers I'm buying from, I don't want my best clients to be uninformed. So then I put on that, trusted advisor, that consultant hat, and said, hey, I want people to understand what they're getting into so they can make the best decision for their family. Versus a lot of people just like, I don't care if you know or not. I want you to not know. Let me do a sleight of hand and just make you this lowball offer.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, pick me, but I don't want you to really think about it, type of thing.
And I imagine sometimes there's times where you've lost deals, where you've kind of laid the cards out and said, hey, here's all the options that you have. Here's the solutions that exist. Mine is one of them, but I imagine there's times where people realize that yours might not have been the best for them, right?
Absolutely.
But
plenty of times where I've said, hey, and I'll tell them, a very frequent line I say is, regardless if we do business together, I want to leave you better than I find you.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, but I cannot tell you how many times I have also won out, even though I know for a fact my offer wasn't the highest.
Yeah, that's good. And I think
it goes both ways.
Good for the quality of the industry, right? Like, versus I think sometimes we as investors or wholesalers or whoever get kind of a bad rap of like, oh, we're stealing grandma's house for pennies on the dollar, right? Now, certainly those people do exist, but it's good to see that there's an opportunity to do things right and be able to sleep right at night and provide solutions for people, but also build wealth and accomplish the goals that you have, right?
Yeah, and that's the hope, right? That's the hope.
That's awesome. So let's say, I guess my question, and I'll give a little bit of context, but would you say that creative finance, real estate investing is possible for anyone? Let's say there's somebody here today that says, hey, look, you were talking about money. I have no money. I'm not skilled. I'm not a carpenter or anything. Like, can that person who's sitting in the room today, can they actually get started investing in real estate? Could they buy rental property in 2024?
Yes. I believe anyone can do it. It's not rocket science. At the end of the day, though, I would question, based on what you have, what you should do. It's not whether you could do it, but it's whether you should. And, history taught me, very early on when I bought rentals, when I didn't have any money, I'll just say, actually, I heard you say that real estate's a great amplifier.
Yeah.
If you don't have money, it's not like real estate's going to make you unbroke. Houses cost money too, especially rentals, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you could, but I want to encourage you of the version of should, and
Right.
or, you know, could you do something, and but maybe where you lack, and this is where you can bring in creative financing. Could you bring in a partner who could finance, you know, the difference of what you don't have, things like that.
Yeah, that's good. And the partnership's a good route. What's the saying? I'm going to butcher it, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go
together. Go with
together,
others, yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And so I think that's a good point to bring up, that yes, it is possible, but there's probably a right and wrong way, or a risk averse or a high risk and low risk way to go about it, right? But any tips for that person who is thinking that they're ready, wanting to accomplish something in 2024, wanting to get into real estate investing, whether it's creative or otherwise? Any tips for that person?
The best advice I got when I was getting started was go watch the game and learn the game before you play the game, especially in today's market. The number one, I've been very vocal about this on social media and stuff like that. The number one phone call I'm getting is investor rescue. The idea with that is educate yourself so that you can play both offense and defense. You don't know what you don't know. And so I think that's important.
I want to unpack the offense and defense. What do you mean investor rescue? Like what kind of situations?
People who structured deals wrong, people who got short-term financing and they didn't realize how much that can bite you. People who are illiquid and they have these properties, but they can't access capital from them. Plenty of investors on the brink of bankruptcy, foreclosure, divorce, multiple things. In good markets, weaknesses are hidden. In bad markets, what is that famous quote? When the tide goes out, you can see who's
swimming naked.
Swimming without any underwear on. So, and that's what we're seeing. And I think we're going to continue to see that.
Yeah, that's great. And you talked about playing offense and defense. Unpack that for me. What does that look like?
I had a phone call with probably one of the wealthiest people, top 5 wealthiest people I know. And in that phone call with him 3 or so weeks ago, he mentioned that he was doing new construction stuff, doing developments, and in the developments of the subdivisions, he would build some properties and keep them as rentals, and that's how he was building some of his single family portfolio. Well, the bank, so he'd be all in at such a low cost because he was a part with the builder of the development. And so, if I remember the numbers right, property appraised for $340, he was all in at $180, right? Great deal. We'd all want to do that deal. Bank goes, hey, you want me to give you $40,000 back at the closing? You want me to give you $60,000? What was that? The Burr method, right? Mm-hmm. Pull money out of it. He told the bank, he's like, no, keep my capital risk, my exposure with that debt low. And I told him, I said, that's very smart. I said, you played defense then. Offense was getting the deal at a great deal. Defense was saying, let me limit my exposure to debt, or let me find ways to bring, some offset some of that risk exposure.
Got it. So it's not a market dependent. You're saying it's something that you're pushing offense and defense simultaneously through each deal. Not I'm strong offense, holding off on defense.
So this is a journey. If this is a journey, think of it being in a car. If the only way you know to go through this journey is your foot through the floorboard through the gas, well, sure is fun going 150 miles per hour.
Yeah.
But the police have something to say about that, but so does gravity, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to know when to pull off the gas, or when to, there's things you have to learn to do. And I think not a lot of people know to do that, or it's not talked about enough. And so that's just something that the gray-haired guys taught me. They said, Courtney, tons of guys blew up and bought hundreds and hundreds of doors, but there's a lot of them not here today, meaning still in the real estate game. It's because they made decisions that were their demise.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm sure in today's world of like social media and comparison, and right, you see these people that, oh man, I've only got whatever 10 doors. This person I see on Instagram has 200 doors. I gotta step my game up. I constantly have to grow and scale.
I have a word for that, and it's chasing the real estate Joneses.
The real estate what?
Joneses.
Okay.
It's like that idea of like, oh, if I'm not doing 100 deals a year, I'm behind. Yeah.
That's good. And what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy, right? That's good. What does it take to be successful in real estate? And I'll kind of caveat here. Problem solving is clearly part of your DNA, right? But what other skills or attributes or beliefs or what's essential for somebody to be successful in real estate long term and not be a flash in the pan that your mentor referenced?
I had 3 or 4 ideas with this. So problem solving is huge.
Yeah.
Problem solving is probably the greatest attribute. Staying power. A lot of people quit too soon. I'm a real big fan of Alex Hormozi. What does he say? Entrepreneurship is a test, not a skill, but of will. So it's this idea of staying power. The second one is, and someone way smarter than me has framed this, has said it before, I'm regurgitating this. It's the tolerance of ambiguity. I closed on a deal recently since the first of the year, and so I shared about it. I had all these first. It was my first time doing it in a different area. It's my first time doing it with my self-directed 401k. It was my first time doing 2 different creative deal structures that I had studied for years but have never done. Just like all these first. But I was able to get the deal done because there was a level of which I didn't have to know 100% of everything. And I find that a lot of people, because they're so, they need to know it all, they don't pull the trigger. And so you have to have a tolerance of not knowing it all, that ambiguity. And so I think I had one more, because I want it to be succinct, because that's not one of mine. Oh, and just being a constant learner. Pete, one of my biggest mentors, I have heard him speak on a lot of stages, but I think equally I've sat next to him as a student in conferences, and that blows me away because I think he's, easily the most prolific deal maker in the country, and yet I sit next to him frequently, just as much as I hear him, learn. And that's a strong reminder that you never arrive. You constantly want to be learning, building your skill sets, all of that. You guys are doing that tonight.
Yeah, and I think you talked about being comfortable with that ambiguity, right? I guess being willing to build the plane as you fly it, right? Like taking off knowing, hey, I still got some work to do on this plane. I guess having enough of a framework there that it's not going to crash and burn, but being okay with
there is a level of risk of tolerance that you also have to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think one of the good metaphors that I've heard is people look at the real estate investing, for example, as this big giant wall of boulders, right? And they say, well, I could never move that wall. It weighs 30 tons or whatever it is. In reality, it's just made out of a bunch of 40-pound rocks, right? And so you can go and pick one rock up and move it, and a year down the road, you've moved the wall, right? But I think people get caught up in, well, I'm not ready to buy a rental because I don't have a lease. What if tenants smear feces on the walls? Or what if I have to evict somebody? I don't know how to evict somebody. And so I agree that you do need to have a level of risk management, but you also don't need to have the answer to every problem down the road.
Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess it's balancing those two, right? And I think it's part of it is knowing
offense and defense.
Yeah, right. Yeah, offense and defense, and knowing your personality to know, hey, I'm a analytical analysis by paralysis person. Want to have everything figured out versus for one of those, there might be another person who's fly by the seat of their pants and YOLO jumping off of a cliff, right?
Yeah. We see both of them in real estate. find that happy medium.
Yep, absolutely. So I would consider you, I kind of jokingly, not so jokingly, I refer to you as a black belt in the investing space, right? And I guess this is similar to a question I asked earlier, but for the person who is wanting to grow but not brand new, right? Let's call it a blue belt, right? Where they have a couple deals, they've maybe flipped a couple houses, have a couple of doors. What does it take to get to that next step, right? Because the advice for that person is obviously very different than the person who doesn't know a thing as a white belt. Mm-hmm. Like, what's your advice or recommendations for that intermediate person?
The new guy needs education. Guy who's done a bit, get clarity, because from clarity, you can work backwards with an action plan. And I see a lot of people not getting traction because they don't have enough clarity, and they're doing this, they're doing that, they're, one day they're flipping, and then 3 weeks later they're wanting to get into short-term rentals, and they don't have a lot of clarity, and so then they're just they're spinning their wheels, getting doing a lot of busy work. And so for that guy, I would say have a ton of clarity, and then put the blinders on and work your action plan.
Yeah, that's good. What is that book? I saw it on your shelf. Oh, yeah, the one thing. I remember seeing it on your shelf. Courtney has a super impressive library. I think a library is a very accurate description of the book.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm not the type of person that dreams of the kitchen or the closet. It's more so the personal study is, that's always been, I'm like, man, I'm a package deal, me and the books.
Yeah, it's impressive, it really is. So you talked about having that vision, right? And I guess we'll kind of dabble in a little bit into how do you go about goals, or what's your operating system? Like, how do you take, hey, I have this life vision 10 years from now, I want to be here. How do you break that down into those like tactical, tangible habits? Like what's the operating system that you work out of?
So with that clarity, I know where I want to arrive. Mm-hmm. And I've built that action plan of what it takes to get there. And then I just operate on a weekly basis of, if I do these 6 items, then, and as long as those 6 items I'm doing them to a certain degree that I'm active in them, business is moving forward. So I have a very clear destination of where I'm going, and I don't mind jumping into that later, but the 6 things that I care about, it's less about the destination. It really needs to be about the action items today.
Yeah.
Right? One of these books here, it's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I love the book. It's this idea of what you do today is critical of where it's going to take you, right? Like where you're going to go in life. So those 6 things, and I literally paid someone to like put them permanently on a dry erase board, and it's just marked into 6s, right? I'm very tangible and tactile. The first one is I need to talk to motivated sellers. I want to either follow up with them. I want to talk to them for the first time. Someone told me, hey, you need to talk to this person. So it's on my list, and it's right there in my office. Second one, tied to those motivated sellers, I want to walk the properties that this motivated seller has. The third one is I want to underwrite the deal. Running comps, looking at maybe the cost, the income and expenses tied to the property, right? The fourth one is I want to make an offer, right? I'm doing all that. I want to make an offer. And then the fifth one is networking. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Right? This is a critical part of this, right? I have done plenty of business with people in rooms just like this. Like you mentioned, I founded the one on the Northshore, handed off. Cole is here in the room. He runs it now. But I go to these. These are in my calendar frequently. A lot of you guys, I've met you at the West Bank Meetup, the Noria, the Baton Rouge, Mississippi ones. So networking is huge. And that might even look like coffee with someone, lunch with something, something like that. And then the sixth one is branding. For me, I have a belief that it's not enough to be a good deal maker. You have to be a known deal maker because, well, to put it succinctly, someone once told me, I wish I knew someone like you existed. And so Grant Cardone said it. He said, "Hi, my name's Grant. If you don't know who I am, that's my fault." So I would say the same. "Hey, my name's Courtney. If you don't know who I am, that's my fault," right? And so that goes into the bottom two, the networking and the branding. So it's social media, various things like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What about like metrics? Do you break it down by I want to go see a certain number of properties, or I want to, talk to X sellers? Like, what does that look like tactically in terms of?
At one point I was running my business where, scaling, and that was required of me. Mm-hmm. I never was good at tracking that stuff. So if you know anything about business, I'm a visionary through and through. So I'm not good at like tracking stuff, things like that. Which is why I have it all on a dry erase board in my office. And if they're full and active, and if I look at my cell phone calendar on my phone, and it's busy with those 6 things, I know business is moving forward. But if I haven't made an offer in a while, or if I haven't been talking to a seller in a minute, it's like if my week doesn't have time to sit down to underwrite deals, I know business is slow. So for me, it's not necessarily like I would have to look back and actually tally up for you how many offers I made this week.
Gotcha.
That is not how my brain operates.
Right.
So, but for a long time I forced it, right?
Yeah.
I forced it. But now the model that works for me is I just have those 6 buckets, and as long as those buckets have activity, that water's not stale, as long as it's consistently running through it, I know business is going to keep moving.
Nice. You talked about continually learning, and I agree. There's as you were talking about that, there was a quote that stood out to me. I think it was David Osborne said, he said, people often focus on where we are and where we want to be, but he said the more important question is who we are and who we need to become to get to where we want to be, right? So I guess in that vein, if somebody wants to learn more and continue to grow, what are some books or websites or resources, conferences, like where would you point people who are thirsty for knowledge?
If you go to CourtneyFricke.com, I have on there a list of book recommendations. So that's one thing. Another thing on there is one of the big goals I have for 2024 is building out my YouTube channel. On there right now, we don't have videos yet to really put out, but I do have playlists. And those playlists are pulling from videos that already exist on the internet. So every time I've shared, once it gets put on y'all's YouTube, I'll add it to all of my RIA appearances. Or if I've been on a podcast, that's in a playlist, right? I have a playlist on there that is 136 videos strong right now of all of my mentors and my closest allies, and it's everything from on YouTube in that. So if you would want to learn from some of those folks, you can just start watching them, right? And then conference-wise, I've done this numerous times. 2 of those 5 mentors who are in their late 70s, you're never going to get the marketing unless you hear it by word of mouth because, like I said, they don't have social media. But every April, they teach a class together. And I do my best to bring a big group of people, and I get nothing out of it except for the joy of learning together, like a shared language, but also you guys getting introduced to their philosophies. And so that's a conference that's in April, that's in Tampa. It would just be come be a student with me type of thing. But John Schaub, who is the author of my favorite book, which is right here, Building Wealth One House at a Time. I think there's a 3rd edition of this. You can tell it's been a minute since I've had it. But John Schaub, this is the #1 book I recommend people to go read. John teaches a class with my main mentor, Pete Fortunato. And it's literally, the topic for April is, it's buying deals in any market, strategies for offense and defense. And that, if you've been around me for a while, this is not new language for me. And so as soon as I saw that, I about dropped my I dropped my phone. I was like, that's it. Like, so this year more than ever, I am recruiting people to go be a student with me. So if you're interested, that's April 13th and 14th in Tampa. Get with me, and I'll give you more of the details. And we usually bring a group, 20 or 30 people, and go there and have a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I highly recommend, like she mentioned, CourtneyFricke.com, right? And those YouTube videos, because we kind of intentionally stayed high level talking principles, right? Like we stayed, 30,000 feet today, but there's a ton of videos of interviews just like this where Courtney kind of gets into the weeds and talks about at the marina, right? Like your stories about the marina and ways that she adds value, deal breakdowns, stuff that's super, super valuable that in 45 minutes we wouldn't be able to scratch the surface of any of those, right? But highly recommend. There's some really good content, really good knowledge. And then you also do a workshop, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's one of the things that I like sharing. So like on CourtneyFricke.com, one of the videos on YouTube is an hour plus where I break down how to buy property subject to the existing loan. And I break it down like, hey, here's the things you got to think about. Here's the things you got to look at. I talk about how to raise private money from everyday people, like how to get someone you work with, not like a hard money lender, right? And it's over an hour long, and I break it down. Even with an hour of staying on one topic, it's not enough. Yeah. And so a 2-day class, so I've got one in February. You can see it in the back, and it's about how to do creative deals with real estate agents. I feel like that is something that a lot of folks are trying to do, but doing incorrectly. I got 2 phone calls today from agents who are like, Courtney, what's subject to? I just got 5 offers on buying someone to buy one of my listings subject to, and I told my seller to not consider any of them, but then my broker told me to call you, right? And there's a level, I frequently get subject to deals, seller finance deals with agents on market. I get off market stuff, and I want to help people understand how to do it. There's right ways to do it. Going back to that ethos, that philosophy of real estate, how you do real estate matters. And so there's a flyer in the back. I hate talking about stuff, but talking about having that. But I really enjoy the long form. It'll be 2 days on Zoom and 100+ page manual. And I try to keep it affordable so that anyone can attend it.
Yeah, and to be clear, that wasn't a talking point. Like, I knew of the workshop. She specifically didn't want to talk about it, but I kind of put her on the spot.
Yeah.
Because I do think that it's valuable. I want to make sure this session specifically, we leave time for questions, because I think, again, we didn't go into the weeds of creative finance, and I'm sure there's going to be some questions about that.
Do you mind if we define it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know we didn't head into some of the questions on creative financing, but do you mind if we define it?
Yeah. And I do have one before we turn it over to the crowd, but yeah.
Okay. So a lot of times people ask me, hey, Courtney, what is creative financing? And for the longest time, I've said it is where I utilize the seller, right? I make payments to the seller, something like that. I make some sort of agreement with the seller, or I utilize their existing financing to get a deal done, to solve a problem. But I feel that has historically, it's been good enough, but it leaves, it's almost that's the smoothie version of what creative financing really is. So if you want to know my true definition, so that's the one that's palpable, right? You can easily digest that. What I really think creative financing is that you use what you have to get what you need, to get what you want. Let me say that again. Creative financing is, really, there's no limit to it, but you use what you have to get what you need, to get what you want, which is completely vague way to describe something, but that is the whole point. Creative financing, that is everything from, hey, the first time I went to my mentor Leon Johnson's house, we're driving around because we went to go throw the crawfish heads in the pond, and we're driving around with side-by-side. He says, hey, you see that pull-behind camper trailer? He said, I'm going to use that as a down payment on my next seller financing deal. right? We think cash money has to be the only currency. No, promises can be currency, right? The promise to pay, payments over time. It can be, hey, let me trade you this as a down payment. Or, hey, let me trade you this in exchange for the first 10 payments, right? Creative finance can look like a lot of things. Most people don't scratch the surface, and it truly is, in all intents and purposes, in a completely new world of a language, a way of doing deals, things like that. So yes, it is utilizing the seller and or their financing to get deals done, but that's barely the gist of it. It's really use what you have to get what you need, to get what you want.
Yeah, that's good. Man, there was something I just forgot. Yep. That's what you said. A quote yesterday when we were talking that talked about, what's that quote about? Pain versus. Help me out. What was that quote?
Yeah, the relief of pain offers rewards far greater than price or terms. Meaning, when you solve a problem, that is secondary. Price becomes secondary to that solution, right? So for example, number of times whenever I get long-term seller financing deals with no balloons, meaning, it's 30 years payments to an individual. It is often because I'm solving some sort of problem. And because I'm offering a solution to that problem, the price and the terms, they're secondary. Because what they're saying is, hey, if that can get me what I want, I'm open to it. Same thing if I stop a foreclosure and I say, hey, let me catch up your loan and take over making the payments. Let me buy it subject to the loan, right? It's the relief of that pain. They're saying, hey, look, at the end of the day, if you can solve that problem, absolutely you can take over my 2.25% loan, right? And so understanding this, that is a critical junction. Is so many people say, hey, how do you get these 0% down, 0% interest, 0 down, or, how are you manipulating the market with these 2 and 3 and 4% loans right now? It's understanding there's avatars of people who are primed to do these types of deals, and it is a win-win. I've had sellers who, I had one woman, she's 63, she gave me a 30-year seller financing, no balloon. She said, I wish I had 10 properties to sell you. I said, so do I. Can you go find some? Can you go get some more? But knowing that that's necessary.